Matthew 7:6. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So today I want to talk about a text that for a long time really gave me a lot of trouble. I had a lot of questions about it. I didn't quite understand it. And from questions I've heard from others, I'm not alone. It's Matthew 7:6, the whole pearls before swine verse. Pearls before swine, as a side note, is also the name of my favorite comic strip in the paper. So first, these words from Jesus are part of a larger section in the beginning of the book of Matthew called the Sermon on the Mount. It's important to understand that this isn't a random collection of interesting bits and sayings. They're actually arranged in a very specific order because there's a brilliant inner logic to what Jesus is doing here, a progression that reveals itself when you read it as a whole. Again, this is why we need that altitude adjustment. We don't just want to read that one verse, don't toss your pearls to swine. Where does it fit in the larger narrative? And in this case, in this larger teaching that Jesus is giving. Something else to realize. A little summary of the passage before we get to the dogs and pigs part. To thrive in life requires tremendous discernment about what you can control and what you can't control. I think we've all learned that a bit more this past year. We can't control a lot. We thought we were going on just fine. We had the system set. We knew what tomorrow would hold, and then boom, pandemic. I like to plan ahead. I like to control things, and I have not been in control these last several months, and it kind of freaks me out. But I've had to realize, again, what can I control? What can't I control? I can't control every church member's reaction to all the choices this session makes, how we're trying to move forward in this pandemic. I can't control if everybody's happy. What I can control is how I deal with it, and I admit I haven't done it perfectly. And I can try to control our response, our faithful kind of moving forward in the midst of this, working along with session. There are things we can control, things we can't control. In regards to the things we can control, Jesus teaches us in this passage to practice nonviolence, to do the right things for the right reasons, to live generous and faithful lives with integrity and joy. Jesus then talks about worry, teaching us how to entrust ourselves to the God of love who knows what we need before we ever ask for it. This is the calm, grounded, centered, non-reactive living in which we trust that no matter how chaotic or uncertain things are, 2020, we will be okay. He's teaching us to have a quiet mind, to silence the voices that can run wild in your head, nagging you with tension and stress. So why is this crucial to our living? Because lots of people spend, or more accurately, waste an extraordinary amount of time and energy on things they can't control. I think we're all guilty of it. Worry is lethal to thriving because it's a failure to be fully present. Worrying about something means you're there, not here. You're stuck ruminating on the future, not enjoying the present. Jesus teaches us to be fully present in this moment, not missing a thing right here, right now. Now, we all worry. It doesn't make you a bad Christian if you worry. And if you have anxiety and someone just says, well, Jesus says not to worry, that's not a help. There's a difference, I think, between anxiety and worry. I think sometimes we can all just get sucked into a worry cycle, and we need to be able to get out of it at times. So these words of Jesus are concrete, practical, brilliant wisdom for how to live in the world with the most joy. And central to this kind of life is Jesus' insistence that God can be trusted. So chapter 6 ends with Jesus saying, don't worry, each day has enough trouble of its own. And then chapter 7, which is part of this whole pearls before swine chapter, begins, do not judge. So how did we get from worrying to judging? This is all kind of part of one teaching. I think it's because worrying is about you and judging is about others. And that's his point. Notice the progression from do not judge. He then talks about having a plank in your eye and trying to remove a speck from someone else's. Then we get to the do not give to dogs what is sacred, do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. If you haven't looked at chapter 7, look at chapter 7 now. So it's kind of interesting. We go from worry to judging to specks to logs to dogs to pigs. How do we get there? How do we get from worrying to pigs turning on us and tearing us to pieces? Well, I think it goes back to thriving. To thrive, we must first commit ourselves to God's loving care, which will always mean that we surrender our worry and anxiety and drama and stress. That's how it begins. You entrust yourself to God. Then you entrust others to God. So often we want to try to fix everybody else's problems. Sometimes they don't ask for our help, but we do it anyway. We think we're responsible in the sense of telling somebody how to dress, how to raise their kids, the choices they should be making. We're all guilty of it. But sometimes when we worry, we're focused on ourselves. When we're judging, we're focusing on others. So Jesus first wants us to entrust ourselves to God. Only then can we entrust others to God. We entrust others to God because if we don't, we will inevitably deal with our anxiety and worry and fear by trying to control and manipulate them. And how do we do this? Sometimes we try to control others through negative things like judging them and condemning them, disapproving of whatever they do. We pick them apart, we critique them, we try to shame them into doing things our way. Have you ever seen a parent deal with their anxiety about their kids by endlessly nagging them about everything under the sun? When your interior life is a mess, when you're racked with worry and guilt and anxiety, you're desperate for a distraction, something to take your thoughts off the pain and the chaos within, which often expresses itself in judging and shaming and picking apart others. We deal with our own worry by projecting it on somebody else. If we can't fix ourselves, we're going to fix someone else. If we can't control our own thoughts, we're going to control someone else's. People with a high need to control others are generally doing it as a way of dealing with the lack of control they're experiencing within themselves. Which is why one of the first things you learn in recovery is that you can't control people, places, or things. Other times, and here's the unexpected twist, people try to control others not through negative things, but through good things, like giving gifts and excessive praise, all of it in an attempt to control. Some of the creepier things, this whole idea of sexual predators grooming young boys or young girls, or even grown men or women. You groom them, you praise them to the point that they kind of need you. That's a controlling behavior. Have you ever been given something and instead of being filled with gratitude, you had the ominous sense that the gift didn't come from a sincere and pure place? But that person wanted something from you, like it was a gift, but with strings attached. I think we've all been there sometimes. Somebody gives something knowing there's an expectation there, and that's going to come back to haunt you one day. Or take it further, have you ever had someone try to do something good for you, and yet it produced in you a tremendous feeling of anger and resentment? It was confusing, right? Because it was a good thing, and yet it produced a violent reaction in you. Parents, in-laws, spouses, friends, authority figures, these sorts of things happen all the time. People give good things, but there's something else behind it, something not good. And everything within you wants to tear that gift and them to pieces sometimes. It's like you move into a new home and your in-laws come and they're like, well, we'll take care of unpacking, but they do it their way because secretly they don't think your way and your organization is very good. Or they decorate, but it's to their style, not your style, because they've always complained they didn't like how you decorated the old house. They come in pretending to help, but they're not helping. Side note, that has never happened to me. I'm giving an example. Don't think my in-laws are terrible people. They're actually quite nice people. So this is why Jesus talks about giving dogs something sacred and pigs something valuable like pearls. He's warning us to be very careful about how we relate to others, because if we haven't fully entrusted others to God's loving care, we may be giving them good things for bad reasons. We may be forcing things on them that they don't want or they aren't ready for, and they may feel pressured or manipulated. And when people feel like that, they usually lash out. It's kind of like when we think, hey, I'm going to witness to somebody, make them become a Christian. If we haven't really fully entrusted them to God's care, we might be giving them the good gift of the gospel for bad reasons, that we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to notch up another soul for Jesus. There are missionaries and people that just go around bragging how many souls they have saved. It's not about the other people. It's about them and their own need for gratification and praise. They're giving a good thing for a bad reason. Jesus teaches us to be ruthless in our examining of our hearts and our motives and our reasons for doing what we're doing. If we haven't committed ourselves and then those around us to God's loving care, we will inevitably end up trying to control events and people that are fundamentally out of our control, and no one likes that. This is especially true in family systems in which there is a way things are done, and that happens in church a lot too. If someone steps out of line, they often receive tremendous judgment and condemnation. And if they continue on their path, what happens next? Usually the system figures out that the judging and shaming isn't working, so it switches to praises and gifts, trying to win the person back into the fold. All of it a failure to entrust others to God, letting them grow and become whoever God made them to be. How often do we try to control our children, our friends, our co-workers, our neighbors? How often have we felt people are trying to control us? Have you felt that it often doesn't come from a place of genuine love and care? I think we've all experienced it and been guilty of it at some point in our lives. So think about people who have influenced you the most, the people you most want to be around, the people who have a peace that you want. I imagine they have a non-anxious presence about them, a calm and stillness that comes from making peace with life. I think of Pastor Marie like this. She's a very non-anxious person. I think she has really done a good job of entrusting herself to God and entrusting others to God, which is why so often people want to go to her, because they trust she is going to help out of a place of genuine care and not out of a place of control. We have those people in our life, and with that comes a particular posture towards others that these people have. They love you and give to you, but in a way that doesn't feel pressured or clingy. There are no strings attached. They aren't trying to control you or shame you or get you to do anything because they've surrendered their agenda for you, which is the only kind of person who could ever have helped you in the first place. The twist, of course, is that when you entrust others to God, you now actually can help because you don't need anything from them. You aren't working out any unresolved issues or tensions or need to control through them. You give freely with no strings attached. So that's a bit about pearls before swine. If you just read that one little verse, 7:6, you may miss it. But it really is part of that longer progression of worrying and judgment. It's fundamentally sometimes about the need to control ourselves and others, so that even when we give something good, it can turn out to be bad for them and bad for us if the place we're coming from isn't a good place. And that often not good place is a place of worry in our own lives or judgment in others' lives. And judgment is often based in worry. A worry about someone else, a worry about our own lives. Will we lose something? Will the world change? So I'm going to judge them to keep them from doing this thing, which may affect this thing in my life that I'm worried about. Judging is really based in worry. And that's why Jesus starts with worry, moves to judging, and then talks about dogs and pigs and the dangers we can find ourselves in if we aren't entrusting ourselves and others to God.